Well, the White House is facing more fallout from the Rob Porter scandal after the FBI contradicted the West Wing's timeline of events leading up to his resignation. FBI Director Christopher Wray told Congress yesterday that a background check of President Trump's staff secretary was finished before Porter left the administration. White House officials had said Porter's background check was still ongoing.
The administration now says career officials, that's a quote, were aware of issues with Porter as early as last November, but top advisors to the president were not told about the severity of the claims until last week. Porter is accused of abusing two ex-wives. CBS News chief White House correspondent Major Garrett is following the Porter fallout from the White House. Major, there seems to be these contradicting accounts on Porter's background check between the White House and the FBI. What is the latest?
Well, you mentioned that reference the White House made yesterday for the very first time to career officials dealing with personnel matters. An obvious effort at this late stage of this story to try to put some distance between those inside the West Wing responsible for giving the president the most important information, flagging potential problems for him so the White House can take remedial action, saying, well, you know, they really didn't know anything. It was these career people, these bureaucrats who hadn't finished their work. Whatever the White House tries to do to distance itself from the fact pattern here and what was knowable, it's not working, because people close to the president, Chief of Staff John Kelly and specifically White House counsel Don McGahn, were both in position to be more curious than they were and raise flags earlier than they did about what was knowable in Rob Porter's background. Now, accusations are just that, and Rob Porter has denied accusations of domestic violence. But they were nevertheless sufficient enough, once publicized, that the White House accepted his resignation, saying you can no longer work here as staff secretary to the president. So the situation was bad once the public knew about it. The question this White House, after 8 full days, has been utterly incapable of answering is how much it knew, when it knew it, and what steps it took to make a statement on behalf of those victimized by domestic abuse that this White House internally takes that matter seriously. And as someone who's very close to this White House, generally supportive of this White House, told me yesterday, it takes a special talent to take a story that could have been dealt with in 2 days and turn it into an 8-day story. That wasn't a compliment.
Yeah, indeed. So now CBS News has learned that House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy, not running again, I should say this, said that the committee is investigating a Rob Porter security clearance. What does that signal to you?
A turn. Republicans have been disinterested in this topic. Democrats for a good long while have been raising questions about how many people within the White House have continuous interim security clearances. Why does Jared Kushner, a very close advisor to the president, still operate under an interim security clearance? Republicans generally regarded those as nagging partisan questions meant to distract. Well, now they have a situation that appears to have some very loose ends that simply cannot be explained, and every time the White House tries to explain it, it finds itself confronted by other contradictions, either internally or externally. And now Trey Gowdy, who, as you mentioned, Anne-Marie, and it's a very important point, no longer has the burden of seeking re-election as a Republican from South Carolina, is in a position to be a little bit more interested and not be worried or concerned about the potential political fallout. So if Republicans actually follow through and ask some tough questions, maybe some answers will be produced. But for John Kelly, the Chief of Staff, and for the White House counsel, Don McGahn, it's not as if they knew everything, but they were certainly in a position to know more and act more rapidly. And no one here at the White House has been willing or able to explain not only all these underlying timelines coherently, but also explain why Rob Porter's job responsibilities and power were expanded even when it was knowable he had these accusations leveled against him. That's still something that remains a complete mystery.
And so because of that and all the other things that you've reported, Major, Chief of Staff John Kelly is increasingly facing backlash as he appears to have known about these allegations around Rob Porter. The leaks have been fast and furious from this White House in the wake of this controversy. What are you learning about that? I mean, it just seems interesting to me yesterday as I watched the press briefing with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It seemed that she appeared to be signaling to you, the White House press corps, that, look, this is what I was told. This is coming from people. This is not coming from me. This is coming from those around me who have told me this is what I need to tell you. She seemed to be saying that in not so many words, and even in sort of her demeanor, which was very different from the way she's appeared from that podium in the past.
This White House has, for a very long time, almost from the very beginning, and certainly, I would say, from the very beginning, had divisions within it, rivalries. That's sort of an ongoing story. It's sort of what you get with the Trump administration. But even with that history, and even with that known sense of, at times, people turning against one another to protect their own turf or expand their own turf, a lot of that did quiet down once John Kelly became Chief of Staff. When he arrived here to replace Reince Priebus, President Trump invested him with new power. Said he's the chief. Everyone in this building reports to him. And if you want to get to me, you've got to go through John Kelly. That was President Trump investing Kelly with that power. And he used it to limit access and run a much tighter organization and a much tighter ship inside the West Wing. That ruffled some feathers, made some people unhappy, but they had to live with it because Kelly was bringing discipline, order, and he had the president's full confidence. All of that has been undermined significantly by the Rob Porter story. And now you can read blind quotes in the Washington Post and elsewhere, people taking pot shots at Kelly in ways they simply would not have even 3 weeks ago. That diminishes his ability to do his job within the West Wing. It raises questions about his job security, and lots of names keep cropping up about potential replacements. The two that have propped up most prominently and recently, according to my reporting, the #1 economic advisor inside the White House, Gary Cohn, and the Legislative Affairs Director, Mark Short. I'm not projecting that either one will replace Kelly or that his days are numbered, but that his job is in jeopardy, Kelly's, is certainly true, and that these names have been recently floated is also true.
And so, Major, a lot of politics is optics and perception. What would it signal to the world, to the country, if the president had to replace another chief of staff just a little over a year into his administration?
That the turmoil continues and that there is no real means by which order and discipline can be imposed or created for any long period of time. That rivalries within this West Wing tend to continue and over time lead to someone's undoing. That would be the conclusion you would have to come to. And it's not just the chief of staff. Lots of people have come in and out of this White House. The turnover level is at near historic levels. So that general sense of turmoil is always present. I think what's most interesting about this situation right now is how indifferent the president appears to the issue of domestic abuse and domestic violence. He's had numerous opportunities, starting last Friday, to say something in his own words on what this issue means to him. He didn't on Friday. As a matter of fact, he sounded sympathetic to Rob Porter. In a tweet Saturday, he sounded sympathetic to Rob Porter and anyone else accused of these issues or abuse. And then this week, he's had several opportunities to do what he likes to do, communicate things in precisely his way. And he has skipped every one of those opportunities. So it can be fairly said, given opportunities to weigh in personally, the president has not, which leads many to believe he doesn't care about this issue, or at least invites that sort of speculation. He also appears indifferent to the turmoil churning beneath him and around his chief of staff over this very issue and the White House's inability to deal with it. His sort of distant emotional relationship to both the issue and the turmoil is striking to me and unusual, even by President Trump's standards.
In fact, Major, we are going to be talking to Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin. We're going to ask her why, in over a year, President Trump, forget the public statements, he hasn't even named the White House advisor on violence against women, a position that was created by President Obama. He has yet to name a Department of Justice director for the Office of Violence Against Women. So those are all questions beyond those public statements that he has not made, that the White House has not even chosen to fill. Major Garrett at the White House for us. Thank you very much.